was struck by Arctic weather. Ice blocked ports and harbors. Livestock perished and food supplies dwindled. The severe cold was followed by an extended drought. The autumn harvest was dismal, leaving many people hungry. The harsh conditions persisted, and by December, Arctic weather had returned. Unsurprisingly, the next year brought famine and disease, creating an urgent need for aid. In today's second reading, St. James reminds us that our actions, rather than our words, are the true reflection of our faith. During that crisis of 1741, the expression of faith was put into practice to raise funds and have relief programs for the needy and the starving poor. The decision was made to invite the renowned composer George Frederick Handel to Dublin to perform charity concerts. As a result, in response to those urgent needs, the first performance of Handel's Messiah, one of the most celebrated and frequently performed choral works in Western music, took place in Dublin on April the 13th, 1742. Many are familiar with the Alleluia chorus from Messiah. The joy it elicits from this triumphant burst of praise is unparalleled. It's no surprise that people stand in awe when it is performed. Handel spares no effect, employing trumpets, strings, pipes, resounding cymbals, and every voice to proclaim King of Kings and Lord of Lords. By the end, there's no doubt that the Messiah shall reign forever and ever. But then something unexpected happens. The exhilaration of joy fades in the final echoes of the Alleluia. The people sit down, but the soprano rises. Alone, the orchestra strings introduce her aria. I know that my Redeemer lives. There are no trumpets, no timpani, not even another voice, just the soprano's voice declaring the core of our faith. I know that my Redeemer lives. The words of our Lord might surprise those unfamiliar with today's gospel reading. Get behind me, Satan. And they used Peter, one of his deepest disciples. How can Mark record such a title, Satan, for someone Jesus chose as the rock of his church? Like other Jews, Peter eagerly awaited the Messiah, who, according to prophecy, would bring a new era of peace and prosperity. Others had different expectations of what the Messiah would be like. The Pharisees anticipated a new Moses who would make the law even more stringent, while the Zealots hoped for a leader who would overthrow the Romans and establish a powerful kingdom. But Jesus was different than any of these. Mark presents Jesus as the Messiah, but not a populace swayed by the wants of the people. Instead, Jesus' mission as the Messiah centers on selfless service and sacrificial love. This mission is foretold in the first reading, which depicts a righteous person who willingly bears the guilt of his people and endures their suffering. I offered my back to those who struck me, my cheeks to those who tore at my beard. Written during a time of exile and suffering due to sin, this passage offers comfort in the midst of despair. The people anticipate the day when their sins will be atoned for and God will lead them home. The suffering is not for the sake of suffering itself, but out of the great love of God and his people. Then Jesus, because of his teaching and miracles, is celebrated as King and Messiah. They expected him to perform wonders, and while Jesus feeds the hungry and heals the afflicted, he rejects nationalism and political power. Instead, he focuses on promoting life, which requires service and sacrifice, even to the point of death. In some ways, I think Peter symbolizes you and me. We recognize Jesus, but when something happens and we are overcome by suffering and Jesus calls us to follow, what do? It is often at these moments we are tempted to seek things for ourselves, rather than self-denial. Jesus says, if anyone wants to be a follower of mine, renounce yourself, take up your cross, and follow me. He adds, for if you want to save your life, you will lose it. Peter would eventually follow Jesus faithfully and face crucifixion upside down. Our own crosses might take the form of aging, illness, academic failures, addiction, loneliness, or lack of meaning in our life. Such challenges call for self-denial, selfless service, and sacrificial love. In today's gospel, Jesus asks his disciples, but who do you say that I am? This question is directed to each of us as well. It's wonderful to declare Jesus King of Kings and Lord of Lords when we're part of the chorus, surrounded by jubilant alleluias. But when the music stops, the scores are put away, and the hall is empty, and we're left alone, what will we sing? I want my song to be, I know that my Redeemer lives. Ultimately, our response to this question is not about what others think, believe, or say, but about what we personally think, believe, and say about Jesus. If we find ourselves searching for an answer, simply declare, you are Jesus, for there is no other name under heaven given to humanity by which we are saved. My prayer for us today is that we sing the Alleluias, and when that music stops, we sing, I know my Redeemer lives.